Shadow over Telis, a Lovecraftian-inspired sword and sorcery tale, written by J.T. Williams. Copyright 2023. Dedication. I have seen what I have seen. I have lived what I have lived. Judge what you wish. Little matters at the end. Prologue. It wasn't the sudden need to scribe these events that is why I take the time to assure the happenings were documented. I could find some other putrid way to pass time in the billowing darkness, rolling over the walls, or to stoke the pyres to assure that the others do not come up from within us. I once considered myself a simple man, a simple priest, but as things have transpired, I have cast off one title for another, and in such am in a place and moment of time I did not expect. But it was in Telis that it began, at least for me. The events over 2 days as I saw it beside the southern sea realigned my life before my eyes, and in some ways was the entire point of my Vahami. I have changed, and I do wonder if it was for the better, but of that I have no choice now. There is little time left, so here is an account of the Shadow over Telis. Chapter 1. Journey. It was on a western-going road that I left the city of Vasuhal. A wondrous city, where the incense to Vasuhal, god of the race of man, flowed from the high temple mount and down across the great walls of the eternal cultural hearth of the entire race of men. There I had spent the greater part of my life. From the age of 5, I had been under the tutelage of the high priests. I, a simple acolyte, soon to take my rights as a priest, was eager in a way I could not explain to you even now. I was taking my Vahami, a final task after years and years of scholarly study. I would go about the world soon, happily spreading the word of encouragement and love to our people. An honorable task. I had, of course, become accustomed to the comforts of life within Vasuhal. It was only a short walk down from the Temple Mount to the river district and the gardens that lay within. That was within what was called the Starlit Circle, the birthplace of my race. It was a sacred region to the priests, and within the Starlit Circle, one could say that the hands of Varuda, as they formed the first man and woman, were ever present. But it was there, just within the garden district, that I would go with many of my brotherhood to have tea beneath the glowing torch of Varuda. Oh, to feel that now. That would be soothing. Winter was coming, and on the open road now, out of sight of the city, I had started to wonder why any would want to leave. We had passed through a grouping of farmhouses overnight, and my journey to the western reach would culminate near the far western foothills of Elantria. There I'd need to find transport from Elantria itself to Telis on the far western shore. Bickering about my Vahami was something that all that were to eventually be high priests of Varuda did. Most of the time the journey would take you to find some peculiar treasure of the natural world, or perhaps end a dispute in a far-off village. But for myself, it was found that Telis has ceased its offerings of fresh fish and spices from the mountains. While there had been some scrolls sent back and forth, the answers received from the Lord of Telis were short and vague. It seemed simply that something was afoot in the city. It was not decreed I go by any means, but I insisted. In fact, there were no more than 3 high priests that tried to change my mind, but though they meant well, I knew I had to do this. 1. The key to any Vahami as decreed is that an acolyte must set off alone to do beyond the tenets of a simple priest, but to bring glory to Varuda, such as, no other priest shall accompany them, and once Varuda has called forth an acolyte to take on the task, it is the choice of that acolyte alone. I knew what I was doing, or so I thought at this point. It was near sunrise when the horse-drawn cart came to a stop at the city gates of Elantria. The stone walls of the city were a not-so-dark outline against the fogs in the lower valley. Being near sunrise, I thought of how for once I did not need to go about the Temple Mount to the altar to assure the candles did not need to be replaced. a duty of mine for the past 6 months. The winds swept up over the mountains to the west, and a cold chill ran over my fingers. "Of what you need, master?" the cart driver asked. I checked, already confident that I had, already holding my priest staff in a simple bag. "Thank you, I am good. Blessings of Vasura upon you." He said with a stoic jerk of the horse reins. I watched as he directed his cart back east. This was not uncommon. It was a sign of things as they were, a disgruntled show of respect, only as needed, and not a sign of true devotion to God or otherwise. I knew of this nonchalance, mediocre acknowledgement of godly duty, and it was something that he and others that were soon to become priests wishes to change. I myself even felt a drawing away from my scrolls from time to imbibe in the distractions of life outside of Asriel. There were stories, tales of things that could be found in distant parts of the world, every manner of distraction, and tasteful food and drinks, dried herbs that would allow you to find an enlightenment of another kind, where the world would change before your very eyes, and it did not require years of prayer or constant duty. A distraction, one of his own masters used to say. Mind what goes into your eyes, for it shall blend with your own eternal thoughts. Keep yourself focused on the great works and being that is Vasural, the light of the torches of Vasural. It is in the light of God we must remain. The torches high above the city were said to be lit by the essence of our God himself, and I for one never saw any sign that they were not of a deity myself. I had seen many candles and wood-burning altars, but never was oil and wood, or any other substance heaved up to the highest point of the city. No, it truly was an ethereal flame. Even in great thunderstorms the flame did not waver, burning strong, an eternal reminder of our God's love. But this was not Vasrual, but it wasn't quiet Telis either. The sloping hills crowned in fogs met the green grasses of the valley and veiled from sight a waterfall, distant, yet a reminder of the life within the grace of God. The only sounds I could hear were the trickling of a nearby river. I went toward a wooden gate just a few paces from where I was dropped off to find a single guard yawning. She had her hair in 2 braids going down either side of her chest, and a large silver spear held in her right hand. She saw me from afar and bowed, pushing open the small door next to the closed gates. "Light of Vasuda, priest." I nodded, but did not correct her. I, of course, wasn't a priest, though the staff I had was very similar to the ones priests themselves carried. "Thank you," I said. "Apologies for the gate, but there have been some strange happenings. Can't be too careful." Gates in most cities are kept open as to allow the physical spirit of Vasruata to flow from them and to the great city. "You closed the gates?" I asked. "Yes, a precaution. There have been rumors of happenings on distant hills. It comes with the fogs off the ocean. Normally the winds cast off the hazy skies or the sun burns through, but many days and nights has it been since a clear day greeted us with the sunrise." "My apologies. I'm sure I can speak with the city lord if needed, and is the will of Varuda." I shook my head. "No need. I've need to journey west. Any idea where I could go?" "Or west?" "Telis," I told her, "beside the sea." For a moment she stared beyond me, looking out. I took a moment to look behind me, feeling a bit odd that she was distracted almost at random. I wondered if I had said something strange. I turned back to her, and she cleared her throat before nodding. She smiled. The inn, Craven House, just inside and up the road a bit. Some there may go that way, but I wouldn't. Telis is." She stammered. I'm not a priest." "So, I've said too much. Apologies." Her attention went back behind him. and then she turned to look back down the road. "I think you need some sleep, a bit tired perhaps." She nodded. "Yes, I don't sleep well. I will pray to God. I have fallen away from that. My apologies, priest." "Blessings to you," I told her. I went through the small door next to the gateway, passing by 3 other sleepy guards, who didn't so much as even look up at me. There was a feeling here beyond that of early morning. The air was thicker, no doubt from the fog, but I felt even my own mind wasn't awake as it should have been. Then again, much like I had told the guard outside, I likely needed sleep. Leading through a small door that led to street outside, I shut it behind me and looked out at an empty street covered in fog. A stillness came upon me. The sun was no doubt rising to the east, and a lightened sky was above. But though the breath of the fog was upon my skin, I felt a strange mugginess to the air. The only description now that makes any sense is as if a dog was breathing in your face, complete with the pungent odor. I began down the road and crossing through a break in the buildings. A cool wind surrounded me for a moment before the humidity returned. A dog panting on a nearby porch step got up at the sight of me and scurried away, hiding in an alley. It was inebriated and struggled to run, but even as its sallow face stared out from the darkness, the pity I felt for it seemed wrong. It was something I didn't understand but would come to even though the creature had no say in its condition. Truly the vilest of men has no bounds, and that is no more untrue then than now. I came to the inn called Cravinla House, and was happy to hear that I would not be waking anyone, even though it was just after dawn, though the 2-story building sitting at the fork of 2 roads looked as if it was soon to be devoured by the roads itself. Its sloping walls were deteriorating, the windows were rotted, and to say it was the focal point of the buildings around it, conditions-wise, was not an understatement. It felt like the last bit of life that remained in the buildings I had seen so far. Opening the door, I was met with a spicy scent to the air and what felt like 1,000 stares from patrons with saggy eyes and blank expressions. I stood for a moment, adjusting my cloak and swallowing a bit of lingering spit as I glanced from side to side. The patrons returned to their drinks, but any conversation had died away. Instead, low grumblings of hushed whispers took their place. "Not often we see a man of God in these parts," the barkeep said. "I'm just passing through," I said, "looking for anyone going west." "West?" the barkeep said. "Nothing west." At that moment, several patrons got up and left. The barkeep pointed for me to sit, pulling out a glass mug and twisting open a barrel of ale. "You'll have a drink and be quiet." I nodded, taking the drink. The barkeep hadn't introduced himself, but he kept an eye on me, and I wasn't entirely sure why. He went to several other patrons and seemed to be clearing out the tavern. I looked around and noticed there were more than a few strange figures. One, a rather tall man sitting in the far corner of the room with a staff not too unlike mine. I couldn't see his face, but he had a pile of ashes sitting on a plate next to him. Instead of a glass of ale, he had a shorter glass and a bottle with no label. He lit his pipe on a nearby candle, one of many to his right, and stared. The tavern itself was in good repair, nothing like the outside. It was well stocked with fruits and vegetables on a nearby table. There was indeed something cooking in the pot near a large fire, and a hearth with, strangely, skulls lining the white stone. A tavern cat jumped up to the bar top and was subsequently shooed away by the barkeep, who'd pointed at my ale. "Insult my ale, priest?" I shook my head, taking a short sip. "No, it's just, I'm on my Vahami. I am not supposed to drink." The barkeep nodded. "Vahami. So, you want to go west while on your Vahami?" "It is as Vassaron has wished, and I have accepted." The barkeep cleared his throat. "No one goes west, not save those that come from there and wish to go back home. There is a single traveler who goes that way, and by the will of a Varuda, or the curse of death, He has taken up the corner of my tavern here for over a day. Without pointing, I tracked the barkeep's eyes to the person I had noticed before. I understand. I will consult with him for passage to Telis. No, he told me. The price for an outsider to go is quite a bit more than any young priest would have. But I will pay your way for hope you can check on something for me. Something? And someone, he specified. My sister went to Telis 2 weeks ago for a shipment of spices and hasn't made it back. What is her name? Illurin, he said. And before you wonder, I've asked the man over there. He will not speak of anything to me except for his strange requests. At that moment, the man they spoke of stood up, leaving the tavern. I went to stand, but the barkeep tapped my hand, shaking his head. He does that, but he will leave soon. He's just going outside, and frankly, perhaps, I can tell a priest a bit more. Not a full priest, I corrected him. Close enough, the barkeep said. Listen, there was another man, Mr. Ibion, who used to go between Telis and here. My sister went looking for him, and in that time, that strange man started coming here. At first, it wasn't strange, but the skulls on the mantelpiece over there, he told me I had to put them there. The place hasn't felt right since. Then take them down? No, I didn't want to put them up, but the moment I had the thought not to, I felt sicker than I ever had. I had to take a look at these skulls. I don't quite think you should do that. I was already up and moving towards the mantle, but upon getting within only a few paces, my vision darkened and I felt faint. I kept trying to focus, and for a moment, I could take a step forward, but then it was as if I had imbibed in too much wine, and I staggered back. You can't. No holy man can, he said. The barkeep made a point to help me back to his stool, and then looked behind me. He would be hotel earner. He'll only be out there a bit longer before he comes back in. The cart leaves at 9 in the morning, sharp. It's been like that forever, and it is the only consistency I can tell you that remains. I could see clearly again, and though I wanted to, I did not look at the skulls again. What of the priest of the town? Have you spoken to him or anyone of his Varuda? The barkeep shook his head. Our temple burned a month ago, middle of the night. Then came the heavy fogs. Then came him. The shadowy figure had returned. Stay here, I'll speak to him. At this point, I wondered if this stranger would even take me to Telis. The simple truth that he had brought the skulls and their effect on me made me think that there was no way he'd take me anywhere. I had not heard of any like him, and though there were cultists at times in the lands, this was not that. The barkeep returned, pulling out a strong box, and taking a sack of gold, I presumed back to the man. In a few moments, he returned again. He'll take you to Telis, but advises you that he will only stay until sundown. I advise you to leave when he says to, and I would not stay the night. Well, just know, I wouldn't stay the night. My sister, my father, and others that came this way looking for those gone missing in the mists. You are not the first to seek to go that way, but unless you wish to be like the others, come back at sundown. The barkeep said nothing else to me, and as I could reckon by the time since I had arrived, the stranger would soon leave. I took a few more sips of my ale, barely tasting it, and before I could get up the stranger stood behind me. "To Telis, young priest?" he asked, a raspy voice muttered from beneath his dark cloak. Nodded, standing up and realizing that the man was significantly taller than me. Stranger, he had a staff like my own, but of some form of silverstone. "Are you a man of Iru?" But before I could finish, a sour taste filled my mouth. "Mind yourself, young priest. I wish to take you to Telis, but be mindful of words. They can be like poison." The sickness I felt before with the skulls had returned at the mere utterance of the name of God. and as I followed the stranger out, my mind went back to the skulls above the fire. I couldn't even get close to them. Even now, trying to remember what they looked like, I struggled.
The air outside was lighter and fresher than before. Now villagers went back and forth on their daily morning's tasks, but no one looked up. That said, the clucking of chickens nearby made me feel somewhat at home for a moment. One of my first jobs within the temple in Vassarol was tending to chickens. It was an odd reminder of home, and causing me to pause, I almost lost track of the man I was following. I hurried to catch up, finding him on the other side of the tavern in a short and shabby stable with a single donkey and a simple wooden cart. There was no back to this cart, it had seemingly rotted away. "Climb in, young priest," the man said. I did so, a pitting feeling in my stomach, realizing I'd have to sit next to a man who I had not even been introduced to or otherwise knew at all. I hadn't even seen his face. While many within the priests of Varuda traveled with cloaks, it was seen as good respect to lower your cloak when meeting others, particularly other priests on their own journeys. But I already knew this man was not of Varuda in any form. "Varuda be with me," I prayed. "Let not darkness cloud my mind or heart. Let not ill thoughts enter. Let not—" The man had climbed up beside me, and I could no longer pray. Not that I didn't want to, but it was like the words were ripped from me. I instead focused on the light, the great torch of Vassarol in my mind, a symbol of Varuda's power over our lands. Even just the thoughts and memory brought me comfort. And I focused on my breathing. We began down the road at a hasty pace, villagers moving well out of our way as the donkey seemingly growled at those that did not move and were nearly struck. I have never heard a donkey sound like that, and it was then I saw a festering wound on its hind legs. I could see down to the creature's bone, and I wondered how it still pulled us as it did. We left Elantria. The road going west was plain and muddy, but the mists were clearing, and I could finally see the rolling green hills as Elantria itself was known for. From the crest of High Hill, I could even see towards what would be the sea, but a deep fog was upon it. The gray clouds of the somber sky and wisping, howling wind felt as if winter was coming, though it would be far too soon for the frigid cold to feel as it did. At least I could breathe easier here. "I am of the Order of Arkinia, young priest," the man said. "I do not know of that order," I said to him. I looked over, trying to see his face, but could not. "We are of an order beyond that of Vasru Hall, a specialty as it would be. Surely you know of the shores of Vanku or Mortva." "I have not studied such," I told him. "Upon the eternal shores of Vanku go those that have shed the physical realm, either by force or by will, awaiting rebirth." I had no understanding of what he spoke, but I tried to contribute. "I only know of Vasruul, of the light of Iru," I stammered. I tried to say it. I could see it, the word Vasruul, but I couldn't speak it. "It is okay, young priest. That is not important. You have been taught a version of all things that leaves out much, but you are not worthless to the coming. Already many have followed the order of Urkinia. That will make such happenings as they are to come easier. For none are ever truly worthless. Even as one's soul stands on the shores of Venku's river, they have uses. I had never heard of Vanku or Mortua. They were names or titles that made no sense to me. The Order of Arkinia was particularly strange, for I had never heard of Arkinia as a priest or a priestess or historical figure, but my mind seemed to sense something, some truth, be it difficult to ascertain in fullness. I did not feel this stranger in all of his sickening presence was lying. As a priest, I was taught to not judge simply by the appearance of another, and I continued that even now, seeking the light of Varuda in all life. It was difficult in this case. I could tell we were drawing near the coast. The air, salty, blowing over us, gave me some form of comfort in that I knew I'd be at Telis soon. The man had not said anything to me in some time, but As we crested another hill and I saw the open gates of Telis ahead, he asked a question I did not expect. Tell me what you believe, young priest. Tell me of Varuda. He had said the name that at this moment I couldn't even speak. I had been taught to spread the light of Varuda with all questioning souls and to encourage the lost, but something told me that regardless of my words, this man and his strange order of Urkinia didn't truly care. But this was my Vahami. I would do as Varuda wished. That all men and women were created to live under the light of Varuda, God of all and creator of all. That we were given the blessed lands of Vasruhal, and beyond our lands are the unknowns, the ethereal realm of God and ascension. We are to learn balance under the light of Varuda, serve one another in love, and do not fear what is unknown, but embrace all that the great torch of Vasruhal shines light upon. We are of our God, created by him, and honoring him with our daily lives will help us reach enlightenment. That there is no God but our God, and that sin leads to destruction. The man nodded, holding the reins to the donkey taunt and stopping them just before the gates of Telis. So you are to learn balance, but only stand in the light. There is nothing beyond your unknown, that you are all that has and will ever be. Such shallow pride, already rooted, a useful tool. Went to get out of the cart. The malaise I had before had returned, and I simply could not stand to be near this strange man anymore. He snapped the reins. I was paid to take you to Telis. I will take you there. The cart jerked forward, and I nearly fell from it. Within a few moments, we were at the gates. But we did not enter. I stepped out of the cart and clutched my staff. Young priest, you do well. You could become so much more in time. I do hope you find what you seek in Telis. I will await you here. If you desire it, come nightfall. I will not keep you where you do not wish to be, but I will not enter Telis, for it has already been made ready. He turned and began away as a rush of mist caused me to shudder where I stood. Chapter 2. A seaside town. I turned to look at the destination of my Vahami. Standing outside the open gates, I realized that there was a guard here, but he looked almost half asleep, leaning against the outside wall. There were flowers beside the road, but even though they were far from the wall and got some light, their petals and leaves seemed shriveled. The wood here was all rotten, the walls were covered in vines and moss, and though there should have been no reason for such dampness and darkness, the cloud cover seemed greater than before. The heavy fog rolling in off the ocean veiled any sight of the city beyond the walls, and while it was not warm, as was the place I had been before, it felt no more welcoming. I adjusted my cloak and walked towards the gate, the guard not even looking up at me. I stepped across the void in to Telis, and felt the sickness I had before with the strange man that had brought me here flee. But it was not a good feeling that replaced it, not a comfort that the darkness surrounding that man had fled, but instead I simply felt empty. In the oddest of occurrences yet, though a heavy fog surrounded the countryside and the city walls itself, within the city I could see clear from the upper road I stood and the entrance of the city, down to a harbor and the ocean beyond. It was an odd contradiction of sense and normalcy. The pale sky gave way to a strange, warm greenness that was like a veil over my eyes. It added to the feeling that I was no longer in the world I had been, that somehow I was someplace else, a whisper of what should have been, like I had wandered, waking into a dream world. The stench of fish was pronounced, as a gust tore from the shores a good distance away and over the harbor, but somehow that was better than another smell. There was a peculiar odor here, unlike anything I had ever smelt, and though it seemed still, it also seemed that the handful of individuals I had seen in just a few moments were undeterred and did not care of such things. I searched about myself, looking for a small handkerchief, and covered my nose until several onlookers saw me and pointed. I tucked it away and walked forward, putting distance between myself and them and forcing my nose to try to fight through that ever-present, near-wrenching aroma. I knew little of Telis other than where it was. Once I had seen a drawing of the town, but that was a very old one. Now, where I did see the center chapel ahead and the harbor beyond that, there now were dozens of three-story buildings that all seemed to lean towards the road, near collapsing. On the lower, muddy level, pale candle-lit windows greeted me, and much to my own happiness, I could hear children's laughter in a nearby house. This was honestly the first sense of normalcy here. Surely, with children, it could not be as bad as I feel it in my heart. The feelings I was fighting within were more conflicted almost than I had felt with the strange man who had brought me here. Ahead, I saw an open general store and went in. The shopkeep was a man with a black mustache and wavy hair. He had a homely daughter standing in the corner, and while there were numerous herbs in glass jars behind him, the shelves were barren, except for an excessive amount of jarred fish. "Outsider, what are you looking for?" the shopkeep asked. I straightened my posture, passing my staff from one hand to the next. "Blessing of Varuda on you, friend. I've come to seek out the Lord of Telis and to see what aid the priests of Varuda may be here. The Lord is dead, been that way for weeks. What else? I, I'm sorry. The Lord is dead, taken by the sea, boating accident on the reef, offshore, dangerous reef. Water has changed and not many come this way now. The black reef, offshore, many things to be said, but won't be." I grabbed a jarred fish and put it on the counter. Looking behind the man, I saw a flower, one I had only seen in books, a holy leaf used at funeral rites. It had a noticeable smell that would help me withstand the smell of this place, or so I thought. "I'll take one of those," I pointed. "No, no fish either. Time is soon, need both." My apologies, but are you saying nothing is for sale? The man took the jar of fish and placed it behind the counter. "Anything else?" No, but if the Lord is dead who oversees, some say they do, some say they don't. Don't listen to any, especially those that beg. They know nothing. They are fools. There was one that came here. He met with a drunkard. He left. Never trust a drunkard. There was nothing to be said of the shopkeep or his daughter, who had remained silent the entire time. Had she not actually blinked as I left, I would have assumed she wasn't real. Without an item bought from the shop, I left and continued down towards the waterside. Here, it seemed a bit more normal, with the coming and goings of fishers and others that had small boats. There seemed to be plentiful fish in the harbor, but on the outside I saw many ships that had run aground, beyond a sliver of black rock that was only visible in the pale green light by the explosions of white water as the tide came up against it. It was strange that the shopkeep had said that the reef was the cause of so many issues. Two men crossed in front of me. I could hear them talking, but could not discern the language as it was strangely guttural, if I could describe it that way. Ahead, just beside the docks, was the temple of Varuda, and in such I would seek out whoever it was that inhabited it. While many of the buildings had fallen into disrepair, the polished stone atop the steeple still gleamed in the somber light of Telis. I was just about to reach the door when several hooded individuals approached me. "Lest not you proceed before the fall of night, one shall not enter this place before moon rise." I let down my hood, bowing. "I am a priest of Varuda, on my way to seek counsel of those within the temple. I only wish—" Something grabbed my hand. I turned to see a beggar woman. Looking back, I saw that these men, or women, or whatever they were, had staffs not too unlike the man that had brought me to Telis. The priest means no harm, the woman shouted. She smelled of alcohol, but smell was too light a word to describe it, for her own pungency was worse than that. I had the unfortunate happening to have smelt upon entering. For her own stench to be worse was substantial. Come now, priest. We mustn't go where the masters won't have us. She pulled me, and I let her take me away. I had the overwhelming desire to run at that moment, but I fought it, partially because it was my duty here to figure out what had happened, but more so, if I'm scribing as honest as I can, the woman's grip was such that I could not go any place but where she wanted. She pulled me away. The name's Belia. I must tell you, you need to go. Back the way you came, away from Telis. Those of the light are not welcome here. I won't be telling you anything else, but go. She sunk away, vanishing into a dark alley as quickly and as unexpectedly as she had appeared. I looked back towards the temple and saw that the figures in robes were gone. Varuda, give me strength. I must solve this by nightfall, but it seems that I'm not sure where to go. Guide me, Lord of Light, guide me. A crow cawed, and I looked towards the direction of the sound. Billy, get in. I read a sign from afar. Bilyak, okay. I had no intention of staying the night, but a place off the street might be good so I could settle myself and try to sort out my next move, even if at this moment I wasn't too sure on it. The inn itself was not much more than I'd come to expect from this town, but they had a good amount of candles in near the windows that flanked the red door I found myself needing to force open. It cracked open and a bell rung. I closed the door behind me and looked around at a small parlor of sorts with a simple bench and a cushioned chair. The innkeeper ahead was a squeamish of a man, almost like he was a boy, not too unlike me, but with a receding and thinning hair. His face looked near elongated, as if he was sickly, and his eyes were pale, but he was not blind. Visions. Seeking accommodations, young priest. Yes, just a night, please. 20 gold pieces. But I'll give you a happy discount, young priest. 5 pieces for the Lord's work. I paid, and he handed me a rusty key. Room 2C, second floor, back room. I nodded. Blessings, I said. There was something about speaking the name of Varuda here, something off about it. Though I felt it sinful to feel shame in speaking the name of the one God, I felt it prudent to take care. The room was beyond a simple stairwell that was no more than 6 stairs up. There was a 3rd floor, but there was no light that I could see coming from the upper level, and the cobweb stretching across the 3rd floor landing that I could see looking up told me there wasn't much traffic that way anyway. Down the hall, I saw a lone candlestick flickering and forming a dancing shadow on the wall. While I passed other doors, most unadorned and unlettered, I found my room at a T in the building and tried the key. I was surprised when it opened, but pushing in, I realized the lone candle in the hallway behind me was necessary to light the room beyond the outside light coming in from the window. I took it and lit the 3 candles in the room. A gust tore through the cracks in the building, and that sickening feeling I had experienced so many times before returned. The room had a bed, a lectern, and a single chair and table near the window. Looking out from the window, I could see the ocean, and my eyes traced towards the black reef beyond the harbor. From here, too, I could see back up to the main gate I had passed through, but not beyond that. The fogs were rolling in heavy on the outsides of Telis. I sat down at the table and took out parchment, drawing out what I had seen in the city so far. I noted the dead lord, the new reef purportedly, the wreckage of the crashed vessels. I thought of the shopkeeper saying, "Time is soon," and yet I had no idea what he meant. Furthermore, the strange figures at the temple of Varuda within Telis were not priests, and I did not know what they were, What could Varuda need of me here? What is my purpose? I am not even an ordained priest. The wind howled outside my window, and billowing black clouds blew off the ocean before bringing a deluge that I was sure was going to leak through the roof, given the disrepair of the structure. The building shook as winds swept in, and all those outside sought shelter. The storm continued for some time, and as I realized that night was coming, I worried that I had not figured anything out at all. A nervousness overtook me, and I wandered downstairs and to the door, peering out the windows there, as if the storm had passed quicker by looking out of a different window. Pacing over and over, I believe the innkeeper began to become annoyed as each time I walked past the desk, he sighed. Night was coming, and the storm off the ocean was unyielding. I had been sitting in my room for the last hour, and as my candle began to wane, I blew it out. Time to go. I cannot wait any longer. I would return to Telis the next day. I knew better than to stay the night. I would not. As I went to the front door, I found it locked. Is there something I can help you with? The innkeeper asked. I pointed. I'm headed out, just for a bit. You bought a room for the night, he said. I did. But I paused. Why is the door locked? You may not be about Telis during the storms. The tide comes in. It is quite unsafe. But I need food, I lied. Varuda, forgive me. All food can be provided here, but the Order of Arcania has explicitly stated that none may be outside during the storms. I'm terribly sorry, but can I interest you in some food here? I tried the door again, but it would not budge, and there was not a simple lever that I could lift or otherwise a way to get out by my own volition. I had half a thought to kick open the door, but glancing back outside, I realized that the tide had come in and flooded a lot outside. I forced myself to breathe out, looking back to the innkeeper. I will take your offering of food, sir. The innkeeper nodded. Though, of course, I wasn't really hungry. I figured I'd take advantage of the moment and try to learn a bit more. I had to do something, and going back to my room, in the prison of a place I found myself, would do nothing for my nerves. He led me through a door to the right of his desk, through a single door, and down a long hall. The walls were barren, save a torch in between the door we had entered and the wooden door at the end of the hall. The innkeeper took out another key and opened the lock, leading me to a grand dining room, more fit for a lord and his guests than a lone traveler like myself. The table seated at least 20 heads, and the finest of dishes adorned a blackwood table. Here also was a crackling fire within a stone hearth, and what I could only assume was some form of eternally cooking stew near the fire. Here, he said, pulling out a chair, was at the end of the table, and though most of the table was covered in dust, this one spot was clean. Read? He asked. I nodded. Thank you. He went over to a table and, using a large knife, chopped a chunk of what I could already guess was a coarse bread. He set it before me, then went over to the pot near the fire. He scooped me a large bowl of something and set it in front of me. I expected the smell of fish, but surprisingly, it was something else. What that something was, I could not guess, but it didn't smell rotten or otherwise bad. I sipped the broth off the spoon and decided it was at least edible. The bread, hard and dry, helped. In fact, it was a duality between the dry bread and the soup, a decent pairing that, separate from one another, would likely not be worth much. That said, it was included with my stay, as was the innkeeper staring over me apparently. These storms happen a lot? I asked. Yes, almost nightly. I stirred my soup and thought of what else to ask. You say that the Order of Arcania does not allow anyone outside during the storms? Who are they? They are who rule. By the Lord. The Lord is no more. The Order provides for us. His reply was stoic, simple, and monotoned. But they have taken over the temple of Telis, it seems. More soup? He asked me. I shook my head. I had barely eaten what I had, and it was already cold. I need to leave tonight, I told him. I have to catch a ride at nightfall. You cannot leave during a storm. It is forbidden, but you may leave tomorrow morning if you desire. No matter how hard I tried to not think about the fact I would be staying the night in Telis, it kept coming to the forefront of my mind. The food was okay, but the more I looked around the room, the more unsettled I had become. Above the altar was the husk of some sea creature that I did not recognize. Though I had spent some time studying animals of both the sea and land at Vasuhal, this creature looked almost fresh. That was only the start, though, as while I had felt unsettled, the longer I sat there, I realized there was a skull sitting on a table some distance away. Its eyes seemed alive, if one could describe a skull like that. When I stared at it, I saw nothing but an empty skull, but every time I looked away, I could see a faint green glow at the corners of my vision, directly in its eye sockets. You should not worry. The Order of Arcania does not come to the inn. If you follow as you are supposed to, they will not trouble you either. I nodded, setting down my spoon. I do not know of this order, even though I know of most religious sects and those that follow under Iru. The word wouldn't come out. I couldn't even force myself to think of the full name of the one God. The order is old, older than most, older than us, men of the South. We are of the eternal lands, under the great torch of Vasuhal. The north and beyond is unknown, unformed. We are as we believe ourselves to be, but the light you speak of no longer reaches Telis, just as it does not reach Kvardik, down the coast. I had not heard much of Kortika as it was not my purpose in coming west. Kvardik is like here. No, Kvardik defied the Order of Arcania. The stench of rotting flesh suddenly filled my nose. The innkeeper seemed to notice, too. If you are done, I'll take you back out. It is time you seek your room, young priest. I stood up, feeling the need to vomit as the smell overwhelmed me. I hurried down the hall, nearly overtaking the innkeeper, and though it was not much fresher, I was happy to leave that section of the inn. I returned to my room and cracked open the window. The salty air and rain was refreshing. Thankfully, the wind had died down, but the rain continued. I used the candle outside the room to relight my candle. After a short search, I found spare candles in a drawer beside the bed. The pale green sky had faded away, and now, oddly, the night sky was sprinkled with purple flashes of lighting and a soft blue glow. I tried to see the source of the blue glow, but I could not. It was beyond the harbor, based on the direction. Looking below, the water was running back off the street and returning to the ocean, and with it, the horrid stench returned and was forced to shut the window. Lying motionless on my bed, I drifted to sleep, but I would not find rest.
Chapter 3. Kovartik. With sleep comes rest and restoration, the purging of annoyances and stresses, but that was not my fate that night. I dreamed a dream that is still difficult to fathom, even now, but I will try to recall it as best I can. Take warning, if you're reading this and ever have such a dream. Beware, friend. I stood upon the shore, and I cannot tell you if it was near Telis or not, but the sky was the same green hue as it was the day I arrived in the Forsaken City. The air, salty, blew against me as waves crashed upon black rocks below. There were crabs, but they were dead, striking and shattering against the stone in the tumultuous waves that did not come with any balance or evenness, but were erratic in their back and forth churning beneath me. There was a voice on the air, shrill. It spoke in a language I did not understand, and from the depths came a great pillar of stone and bright fire. It pushed up through the rolling waves and stayed as a beacon, almost as if it was a lighthouse far out at sea. Then My focus went to just beneath it, and I saw the black rock of the reef, as was in Telis. I do not know if it was the same one, but it felt the same. I say felt because there was a feeling looking upon this, where I began to feel I was in a dream, but wasn't sure. The shrill voice came again, and then with a cry, it fell away. The ocean boiled, a putrid stench struck me, and I vomited uncontrollably. Then they came. I saw from the waters 1,000 corpses rise out in unison, gasping and drawn out from the eternal grave, meant for them to once again walk upon the lands. But then, a flash, a great light back behind me. I turned to see none other than a sapphire captain, as I knew him. It was a knight of Varuda, and with him came the anointed ones, the warriors of the city. Then I awoke. My body was covered in sweat. I struggled to catch my breath. I sit up in bed and realize I had left a candle lit, but being as tired as I was, I assumed it was a subconscious move. I felt a tremble beneath my bed, and for a moment, I saw imagery of millions of worms, deep beneath the soil of the inn, moving as it seemed something rose up beneath the ground. I shook the thought, knowing that in my just waking state it was full. Varuda, cleanse my mind. May your light pierce the darkness. Bring me comfort. Dear Lord, I ask for it. I could breathe easier. I imagined the light of the great torch of Varuda, and my heart slowed its threatening beating in my chest. A dream. That is all that was. I was awake now, and looking out from my room, I could see that the storm from last night had passed. It was early morning, and though the sun was no more shining today than the day before, the people of Telis were out and moving about their daily motions. I thought of leaving, but it was only for a moment. I thought of my dream and took a deep breath. I knew I was here for a reason, and I would sort it out. I would go to the nearby village of Kvartig, see if I could sort out any clues as to the state of Telis from that place. It was my only thought at this point. Outside of seeking out the woman from before, the homeless one, that had pulled me from the temple and the Order of Vikinia. If I saw her, I'd try to get more information, but I could not wait for that. I had to take action. As I left the inn that morning, I noticed that the innkeeper was sitting in the cushioned chair having a cup of tea. He seemed as if he had not had any sleep at all, and equally was not tired. In fact, I had seen no other attendants or helpers in the building, nor any other guests. If that was the only odd occurrence in Telis, that'd be something, but it was the least of my concerns at the moment. Outside, I was met by a rather fresh sea breeze that did not have the same odor as the other morning. I wasn't sure if it was the hours of storms, or just being off a side street versus the main thoroughfare of the city that went to the main gates. Telis itself was not that large of a village, but it didn't quite have the quaintness of size to truly be called a village at all. Still, most of it I would not dare go down by myself. Most of it was dark alleys and even more unscrupulous individuals. Some were hooded, some seemed to have strange pasty skin, as if they had not drank any water in weeks. But they were very much alive, not at all like the corpses I had seen rising from beneath the ocean in my strange dream last night. At this point, I noticed there were many large stone cracks in the ground near both buildings and away from them. While most of the muddy roads were no different than anywhere else I had seen, these cracks were frequent and pronounced. Something odd to notice, but more odd to find in a region not known for its rocky ground, and truly it was more sensible to see sand here than this rock. It was blackened, too, while the rock of the mountains nearby were more gray. As I walked beside the harbor and noticed quite a few more fishes, it was odd seeing the ocean, and I fought through several flashbacks to those nightmares. They were unsettling and not at all like many dreams I had experienced through the years. I wondered if these were what my masters called visions, But I hoped they were not that, for I would not know how to handle such a trial as I was. Still stranger was it for me to dream of the Sapphire Captain and the Anointed Ones. Those were indeed the protectors of Vasruhal. And I could never see such a host coming to this place. No, if there were those cursed or afflicted, that was not the work of a sword, but of a calming staff and prayer. Not even my masters would deny that. I was headed north out of the town. It wasn't that I didn't know where Kovatic was. It was quite known to me, but even if it wasn't, there were simple wooden signs that noted such at the harbor itself. I needed no transport or other guide. The village was just on the outskirts, on a cape as it were. While Telis was a center port and trade hub, though not quite a bustling place as I expected for sure, Kovatic was a fishing village, and had been for some time. I remembered looking at maps of the western coast, and while there was a larger city further north, it was always a saying that the best fish come from Kovatic, and while I could not attest to that for sure, the saying had to come from somewhere. But the fog was thick beyond expectation going north. I could barely see more than a few paces in front of me, and in truth, I started following the coast itself more than anything. The ground went from solid stone to mud, and then to flooded bog, but I found sure enough footing to make my way. The air, so noticeably better here, was thicker, almost like what I had experienced in Elantria. The water, too, seemed calmer and just a bit clearer. The green sky, however, remained, and I truly began to miss the blueness I was so accustomed to. I didn't know what had fallen across these lands, but I could not deny the doubt filling my mind that I, a simple acolyte, could do what Vasru needed. I had come to a broken gateway and a stone column that seemed to have once been part of a stable. Through the rolling fog coming off the ocean, I could see the frames of stone buildings and charred wood. Pushing a bit further, a gust of wind whipped the fog ahead of me, and I sighed. Seeing that Kovatic, fishing village or not, was nothing but ruins now. What has happened here? I began forward again, tucking my robe in as a chill fell on the air and the wind blew in from the north. It was cold, quickly becoming frigid. The cold air seemed to merge with the fog, creating tonic spaces across the village, show nothing but more ruin. Everywhere I looked, I could see more burned-out frames, and signs of life were not anywhere to be found. The circle of carts and barrels. I kept moving forward, following a cobblestone road between the hollowed-out structures until I came to a center fountain, and a green gold colored. It was there I could see a tree in the fog, a strange thing, even from afar. I saw no other trees or growing plants, but this was like a stark contrast to the fog. It was dark and charred, yet still standing. I guess not all can be burned away. But this is where the tale turns. This is where my simple journey complicated, as turn after turn began to show its much uglier and evil side. I, in my meekness, in my youth and hopeful wonder in the widening world, would not be the same upon seeing this tree. For this tree was not like anything I had seen before. It was not a yew or oak. It was not a maple or palm. In truth, I do not know if another man alive had seen such a tree before. From the trunk of the tree I could see, as plain to me today as I look upon this parchment and quill, the bones of the inhabitants of Kovatic, their femurs woven into their skulls, and their children's tiny skulls almost as like apples hanging from the branches of their parents' arms, And simply, I did not study the bones as I should, but you understand the horror of seeing such. I began to shake, falling to my knees. In the gusts of the northern winds, I could see the flayed flesh of the villagers billowing about from the spines of other villagers in a circle around the tree of bony malevolence. Shuddering, I fell to the ground, trying to call out to my God, but the words did not come. In that moment, I heard the wails of their screams, but I do not know even now if it was real or my imagination, and it does not matter. I gripped my staff in both hands, slamming it down before me. Varuda, vanquish this, bring your light. In a flash of white fire, the tree was immolated and collapsed, and for a moment, blue sky shined above me. I gripped my staff, breathing heavy as the ashes of the bones floated about, and I felt for the first time, but not the last, that I had purified a great evil. I had done something. I had done enough, for now, in my mind. My heart thudded in my chest as I turned and looked back towards Telis. The gray sky rolled overhead, and the pungent smell blew towards me as any fleeting feeling of the cleansing northern wind fell away. I had to return to Telis. I had to sort out what had happened here from any that might know there. I feared for Telis now, and for whatever innocent might be there. Surely those villagers there were the same as these, and not at all guilty of any sin that was deserving of such sacrilege as I had purified here. Perhaps I could contact Vasrel? Perhaps that was my purpose, to report on this evil? I did not know. But at this point, I knew I could not allow what evil that had gripped Gardiek to fall upon another village, or city across the land, or my god Vasral. Returning to Telis, it was like walking back into a place that was asleep, devoid of the knowledge of its nearby neighbor, or what had befallen it. The village should had been in uproar, demanding answers to what had happened, seeking to bury the bones of their kin and friends. But instead, I was met by blank stares and devoid conversations of nothingness. Their words did not even sound like the common tongue. What before was I thought was simply one or two conversations. I realized almost no one's words were discernible. While the shopkeeper with the strange daughter and the innkeeper both spoke just enough to keep up what felt more like a charade than a genuine interaction. Only the homeless woman had spoken clear and concise words. I had to seek her out. Standing near the docks, some distance from the temple, I looked about for the straggly-haired woman, Belia. While there were many moving about up and down the streets, I didn't see her. What I did see was further reminder that something was beyond disturbing in Telis itself. The people of Telis were gathering near the temple. There was a long line of those attending some kind of service at the temple, and it was only getting longer. I covered my head, and while my staff was a giveaway to who, or more so what I was, I did the unthinkable. I set the staff in a broken boat near the waterside. Then, in a further desire to hide myself, I took the advantage left to me of a heavy coat sitting in another boat. Donning the disguise, I got into line, with my head down, much like the others, beginning my pilgrimage towards the open doors of the Temple of Telis. With each step, I drew closer to the open doors. I could hear a soft hum, almost to the tone of singing, but just below pleasant notes. It was a guttural sound, like someone forcing a lower tone, but still wanting it to sound holy. As best as I could call it, I was at one of the 6 pillars, nearly to the promenade to the door. The scent of something flowed towards me, but it was not incense, and I could not make out the smell itself. Closer still, the procession stopped, and a hooded man of the Order, or Irkinya, put up his hand. "Solemn shackle shed," the figure said, aloud and to no one in particular. "Solemn shackles shed," those around me said in unison. The procession continued, and for a moment I could see just inside. There was some form of figure, an abomination set up upon the altar at the front of the temple. It had multiple arms and legs. Its face, if I could call it that, had many tongues. In each hand, I could see the source of the aroma flowing out over myself and the others. Though what it actually was beyond smoking sticks of incense, I couldn't guess, not from this far away. I was just about at the door when a hand grabbed me, pulling me from the line. "No, no!" a voice cracked in my ear. While I first felt stricken with terror, the woman whipped me with her hair as she shoved my staff back into my hands and hurried away from me. I shed the coat I had been wearing and looked back at the temple. While my abrupt exodus had not caused any kind of commotion or roused superstition that I could tell at the moment, I had to make sure. Looking back towards where the woman had ran to, I saw her vanish underneath an elevated dock and attempt to hide behind a pillar. "Listen, come back," I said, following her underneath. "The black reef, the white stones of life," she muttered, shaking her hands at me as she fell further into the darkness. "I will not hurt you, Balia," I said. She suddenly stood up tall, staring at me with blank expression. "Solemn shackle shed?" She posed it as a question. "I am not of them," I said. "Then a drink. Payment. I need a drink." She sat down beside the pillar and crossed her arms, though her hands were shaking quite a bit. This wasn't from cold. And her pale and sunken eyes, coupled with her quivering, told me even more. A drink, she said again. I nodded. Okay. She would stay there. I would go to the general store and get her something. That was, of course, if they'd sell me something this time. Making my way back up the road, I found that the shopkeeper from before was gone, and now only the girl from before remained. She was standing where her father had been. "I need distilled spirits or wine. Do you have either?" I asked. She set a bottle of clear spirits on the counter. "How much?" I asked, taking out my coin purse. "Jackals, shackles," she said monotone and staring. Is your father here?" "Jedding," she said, pointing behind herself and towards the temple. "Oh, the temple? Okay, well, how much for this?" I said, tapping the top of the bottle. She didn't answer. I counted out 5 gold pieces and smiled, taking the bottle. I wonder why she is not at the temple like her father. I hurried back down to where I left the homeless woman. As I walked under the dock, I looked back into the darkness and found her gone. Slamming my fist, I then heard the sound of the temple bells and the congregation leaving. "A simple life," a voice said behind me. It was the woman, hiding in another spot. Her eyes traced down to the bottle in my hand and I gave it to her. She popped the cork and chugged, the burning aroma filling the air. "Simple," she said again. "The people leaving the temple walked by us both, some even looking over, but none said anything. Then by chance I saw the shopkeeper, but his arms were bleeding, his skin's missing in long slices. I tried to get his attention, but he, like everyone else, ignored me. You cannot get their eyes once they have shed," she said, much calmer now. "At least, most of the time." "Shed?" I asked. "Giving up a piece of themselves for the order, for they that come." I told the other man this. I told him. He left. "What other man? Is this like who the shopkeeper had mentioned yesterday?" She took another swig and motioned for me to follow her. We began away from the harbor itself and went down a long stretch of crumbled stone that led out along another jut of land from the harbor. Here, I found that behind a pillar with clear view of the sea, the woman had a small camp. While there wasn't much here, other than some barrels in a broken box, alone with a shabby covering, she offered me to sit. I didn't, instead remaining standing as she sat down. In a small stone box made into the ruins, she tended to a small fire. The area where she was sitting was the only spot that was dry, protected from above by a large statue. It was then I realized this was a statue of an anointed one, holding a sword and shield out to the ocean. I feel safe here, Valia said. It is the only place. For weeks I have worried, seen more shed, more bleeding. I no longer go to temple, and I pray that Varuda understands. This was the first any here had spoken of God. I went to speak, to comfort her, but she spoke first. I am despicable as a follower. I have no gold to give as I once did. Master Leol was a kind man. He had been for all my life, taking me in during bad storms, offering me food and drink at least 3 times a week. He was the first one they shed. She trembled, taking a swig of her bottle and holding it at her lips. He's still there. Inside. He never would say what they say. He screamed, cried for Varuda, but I think the fog makes it hard for our God to hear him. The fogs have power, but not for the light of Varuda. It started with the emergence of the Blackness Rock. Yes, Captain Irel was the first to run aground, and promptly other fishers went to see the strange reef that had emerged. Captain Irel always gave me stuff from his travels. He was rather angry. He said the water had not changed, but somehow the reef came, then the Blackness Rock. It's like a pearl of night, he said. Get Master Leol, there's something not good about it. It makes any sick that touch it. He went on and on about that. Night. The first storm came, then the fog, then the figures emerging from the water with their cloaks and staffs. They came from the depths, I know it, yet they weren't wet. Standing on the shore, they lifted their staffs. I saw it, just as I look out there now. They made the reef larger, and then they were gone. But the fogs remained. That was back before the Lord was shed, much like Master Leol. I had come to understand shedding as exactly what it sounded like, removing the skin. But it seemed that Master Leo did not give in, but I was not sure. Still, she went on. That was weeks ago. Our village did not always look so bad, but it happened quickly. Captain Arl proclaimed he'd get help. He'd go to Kavatik. He and others went, and when they came back, they were angry. They tried to do something at the temple, and then the cloaked order appeared. They fought, and the captain said they'd sail and get more men, and they all ran aground that day. Then came the worst storms I had ever seen. That was the last anyone went against the order of Ikinia. The Master Leol. You said he screamed, that he was shed. Mains, his body is there. I have seen it. He welcomes all with open arms and flesh and bone. His smile was so friendly, yet now he always smiles. He has not lips or a face in which to do anything else. So friendly, he was so friendly. She swigged the bottle several more times. Still I wonder why such as you have come, for you are not over many than 20 years. Where are the anointed ones? She looked above her. Always to protect the light of Varuda upon them, she said, quoting scripture. I do not think they shall come. The fog is too much. I think you should leave here, I said. Kvatik is gone. I don't know who these order figures are, but you should head for Vassar Hall. She laughed. Like one that was already here can leave? The one that goes between Telis and other places would not allow it. You're allowed as long as you do not cause trouble, I'm sure. They work in secret, work in their own way. They cannot do too much too fast, or they risk their foothold being lost. Oh, to see the glory of Vassarud and see Vassarul's sapphire captains. To see the light and fire come back to a place. She began to cry. A place devoid of the beauty it once had, and it has only been a few weeks. They want this. For all of our lands. Eternal fogs, I think. Nothing grows. The sea gives up what is left, but nothing else. Everything sheds. I shed, though not willingly. She rubbed her arm, pulling up her ragged sleeve, revealing a festering wound. If you don't shed for them, you shed regardless. O Varuda, she said, may you bring your fire, your holy fire, and burn away all that hurts. There are those within the crack ground. What damnation awaits them? They fought, but now what do they earn? A grave? No, I do not think. Oh, the cracked ground and stone. Such horror. I believe I scared away the other man. I wish he would come back. She had nearly finished the bottle now. I need rest. Rest before night. Do not be seen with me, or they will ask more questions of you and of me. They lead me because I do not cause trouble. Do not cause trouble. She slumped backward, passing out. I sighed, taking off my outer coat and laying it across her. Sleep with the grace of Varuda, child, I said. Chapter 4, Shadow Shrines. Blackening clouds stretched out overhead. The realization that I'd spent so much time with the woman was surprising to me. I had thought for sure upon waking that I would not return back to the inn, that I would not see that place again, or risk the dreams returning that I had before. But now, after seeing what I had in Kavatik and hearing what was told to me, I didn't feel I could leave. What dumb courage builds within me. Surely a dozen sapphire captains would still fall away from such a threat as was Telis. I would. But then again, as I entered the inn again and paid for my room again, I was doing what did not seem of my own power. Is Varuda truly within me now? Is the one God using me as a vessel in which to purify this place? What is it about the stone? The strange cracked stone I had seen around the city before. The rock was not normal for here, and even she had spoken of it. And then the other man that both the drunken woman and the shopkeeper mentioned. Who was he? Where was he? I did not know then. What I did know was that I had gone to Kritirik and destroyed the bastardized memorial made by the enemy. But I did not even know of who my enemy was. That was all I knew, is that it was some impervious, unfathomable usurper who disrupted and destroyed the lives of so many. Is it truly this order of hooded individuals that wrought such wretched hatred upon us? I could not center my thoughts as I went upstairs, returning to my room. I saw it as my room, my stalwart, ground against an unseen enemy both right outside the window and beneath me. Perhaps my enemy was just within the walls, and I just could not see it yet. I didn't know. Outside, the skies, though dark, did not show any sign of the storm like last night. While the moon had come up, the same green glow permeated through the clouds, and the streets were empty. A knock at the door came, and I about lost my breath as I sat up.
Who could possibly be knocking?
I clutched my staff, making my way to the lock which I had securely fastened before laying down for just a few moments. I cracked it. To see a green eye looking back at me. It was the attendant from downstairs. "A bit of bread and soup for the young priest," he said. I opened the door, allowing him to bring it in and sit it on the table near the window. He paused, rubbing his hands. "I suggest you be wary of the calmest haughty smiles and quietness normally precede chaos," he said. "I noticed there was no storm tonight," I said, making my way to the table with just a bit of small talk to distract. For my mind going over the strange phrase he had said. "Storms come with night, do not worry. It helps to assure that Telis remembers its place." He paused. "By the sea, I mean. Lots of storms come off the ocean." I looked at him and noticed he was speaking to me, but his gaze had not left the window. "Sleep well, young priest." He departed the room. I went over to the door and listened for his footsteps to fade and the creak of the stairs down the hall to tell me he was gone. I secured the door again with the latch and checked it. I wasn't hungry, and looking out at the empty streets, my eyes glanced towards the temple of Telis. The clouds were rolling over the city, and though there were pale lamps casting an orange glow on the streets themselves, I felt unlike I did last night. fatigued but not sleepy. In truth, I wasn't going to lay down. I had been thinking of my intent since before the innkeeper had come in, and now I was sure of my next step. I pushed open the window and looked down at the worn roofing just beneath me. It could be a careful bit of footwork, but I could make it. With staff in hand, I looked back over to the door and then threw one leg over the windowsill. Just a bit of fun, like back at the temple at home, I said to myself, thinking back to playing with my fellow brothers and sisters of the priests and priestesses of Vasaral. Varuda, be with me. I slipped to the roofing and slid almost immediately to the next landing, making a bit of ruckus before leaping down to the ground level. I stayed squatted down, slowing my breathing and rising up. I was just below one of the windows of the inn and looking inside. I saw the innkeeper had not heard me. He was reading a book, and looked rather unamused, in fact. Checking both ways down the road, I darted towards the darkness of the opposite side and began towards the temple. Telis at night had a much different feeling than that of the day, while the melancholy strangeness of the daylight hours was disturbing in its own solemn sadness permeating in every person and structure. Night was like a beast. Not ravenous and obviously terror-inducing, but a more subtle, a hunted feeling overtook me. It was as if eyes were upon me from every dark corner and shadow. The smells varied, and perhaps that was the oddest of happenings. Several times the scene had gone from salt-filled sea to that of mud, and then to the more putrid smells like before. The air would be warm and then cold on my face, and at random I felt the need to vomit. The temple offered no sense of feeling as a temple of Varuda should have. I had reached the closest part of the temple, a column beside the main doors. While there was none of the hooded order standing outside, I did not feel the presence of the one god. There was no light here, no resonance as I stepped. From the muddy road onto the stone before the doorway. I made my way to the door, half expecting for it to be locked, but it was not. Taking a deep breath, I pulled open the door and found the inside cold and dark. With my back against the door, I took a moment for my eyes to adjust. The light from outside shone through windows in the upper part of the temple. The many pews that I expected were thrown asunder and broken. Shattered wood and stone littered either side of the center aisle that led to the altar. Where I expected a metal effigy with 8 points, I saw a broken metal rod and something tied to it. The metal effigy was an anchor point in all temples, 8 points with glowing gold at the tips. The mark of Varuda. But there was nothing of our one god here, and as I made my way down the aisle, I could see the skeletal form of the priest who had been here tied to the metal rod. Before the rod, a new altar, made of sea rock and black stone. It was dripping, the only audible sound within the place. As I reached it, I caught the dripping fluid with the tip of my staff and held it up in the bleak light. Blood, it's blood. I looked up to the priest, seeing his skull barren of flesh. Looking on to the original altar of the temple behind the new one, I could see stacks of human flesh. My stomach turned, and I looked around the altar itself, feeling a cold freeze come over me. My feet felt sluggish. Then, the door clicked open at the front of the temple. I bolted from where I was to a corner of the temple, as far from the altar as I could get. I looked around for a door or some way out, some other place to hide, but there was nowhere to go. In first came several hooded individuals. As they entered the temple, they each went in different directions. 2 stayed near the door, but in either corner, 2 more went towards the altar itself, while yet another dragged a sackcloth bag through the door. A few moments passed before another came through the door. It was someone wearing a hood, but not like the others. His singular garb was brown. But then there came a final figure, robed in black and what appeared to be glowing green robes just visible beneath his outer hood. The brown-robed individual went to the altar where the sackcloth bag was. "Glory to Mortua," he said. "Your shedding is not enough. She must take the pledge, or she must not be. We are too close to have any unfaithful here. The figure behind, the one with a glowing green undercloak, said, I have shed for her and I both, he said, baring his arms that even from afar I could see were bearing and near skeletal. It was the shopkeeper from before. The central figure now brandished a staff, its tip flashing green and reacting with its robes. Not enough. It is time. At this point, the two hooded individuals joined the one holding the bag. Untwisting twine and twine binding, they pulled out none other than the shopkeeper's daughter. Her mouth was gagged. They pulled the gag, and she went to try to fight. No, wait, he begged. Archmancer, please. They all began to hiss. His daughter, with torn robes and a bleeding face, reached out to him. I will do it. Father, she cried out, please, I will go back to like I was before. I will read of their books. I will praise Mortua. See, she will, the shopkeeper said. She need not feel the bite of Mortua, the gnashing of teeth and claws. No, we cannot subdue her any longer without sacrifice, for you must be the lifeblood for our goddess, who rules the void between life and death. It is necessary. The one I knew as the Archmancer said. This was the most I had heard them talk. Any of them. Any within Telis, in fact, except for the drunk woman.
She must be shed. Both arms and legs and take on the mark of Mortua, the Archmancer went on.
The Archmancer brandished a curved black knife. Remove what is asked, now. The shopkeeper took the knife, barely able to control his own hand shaking as he began to sob, going towards her. I did all I could. I pledged to you all. To Mortua. I mustn't. You must, they all hissed in unison. Father, she said. Father, she screamed. I clutched my staff, wishing to help, but not knowing what I could do. I was no priest. I couldn't just not do anything. I had to act. But then, the shopkeeper did something that I did not expect. He stopped. I shed and took on those that you wished, he said, turning to the Archmancer. Do what is decreed, the Archmancer said. I did it. I lost my man to you and she gave it back. You lied, all of you. Now you wish me to take the skin of my daughter. Pain and suffering precedes awakening. A truth even those of your dead god will tell you, the Archmancer said. How can one know what is good without first going through the trials of pain? Is not peace sweeter when you've tasted the bite of true suffering? Mortua, our goddess, wishes only the strong to inherit the world she offers. You must show such fortitude, for she is worthy of such devotion. The shopkeeper looked at his daughter. Your mother, she would have wanted this. She will understand. He stepped towards her. She wept. See the light of Varuda. Believe. Believe when the shadows fall and my body is cold, dear child. The shopkeeper turned back, lunging for the Archmancer. The Archmancer glowed green, reaching out and stopping the shopkeeper only a few paces from where he had started. The shopkeeper shook, still trying to force himself forward. The black dagger in his hand disintegrated and appeared in the hands of the Archmancer. Surely you are the strongest of Telis, after all the others? After Kvartik resisted, the captains resisted. You wish yourself to be added to those beneath? To await the great awakening? No, please, the shopkeeper's daughter screamed. The Archmancer made a movement with his hand, and the girl was grabbed from behind. Her muffled scream was constant. Then, the others not holding her, drew out their staffs. Sacrifice is required, but you are no longer a fortitude, seen worthy for continued service, the Archmancer said. Then they attacked the shopkeeper, over and over. Their strikes seemed to flash silver as they struck the shopkeeper's flesh. He remained suspended as they pummeled his arms and legs, pulverizing them as they moved up to his abdomen and chest. The cracks of his bones echoed off the halls of the temple. I slid down from my position standing. I could barely breathe. The archmancer lifted his staff. Green fire consumed the shopkeeper, and it seemed the ground beneath the floating flesh and broken bones opened. Then the temple was dark again. Another added into the others. Now she must be made as she should be. I couldn't see what they did as they did it, but it was dark, and though I could see nothing, I heard the sounds of tearing and cutting. But it did not take long. In the end, the hooded individuals and the shopkeeper's daughter walked out together, and the temple became quiet again. I struggled to contain myself. I wanted to run, but I did not know where I would run to. Forcing myself up, I went to the altar and saw bleeding pieces of flesh laid out with the others. These were newer, glistening in the pale light above. I looked to where the shopkeeper had been suspended, and now there was a crack in the floor of the temple that was not there before. It is then I realized what I had seen before, the strange cracks throughout the city, the pungent dead smells. It was others that had resisted. But what did it mean? I was getting closer to the truth. Returning to the inn and to the purported safety of my room, I had one bit of ease, in that the innkeeper was gone from the front of the inn, so slipping in and up was easy enough. I secured the door and the window. Laying down, I stared into the clouds outside, realizing that there had not been a storm. But then, almost as if it was waiting for me to realize such, lightning flashed and the ground shook. I sat up as bands of rain pummeled the outside window. The stench of the dead filled my nose. What can I possibly do? Chapter 4. Shadow Shrines. Blackening clouds stretched out overhead. The realization that I had spent so much time with the woman was surprising to me. I had thought for sure upon waking that I would not return back to the inn, that I would not see that place again, or risk the dreams returning that I had before. But now, after seeing what I had in Gorditik, and hearing what was told to me, I didn't feel I could leave. What dumb courage builds within me? Surely a dozen sapphire captains would still fall away from such a threat as was Telis, I would. But then again, as I entered the inn again, and paid for my room again, I was doing what did not seem of my own power. Is Rossiter truly within me now? Is the one God using me as a vessel in which to purify this place? What is it about the stone? The strange cracked stone I had seen around the city before. The rock was not normal for here, and even she had spoken of it. And then the other man that both the drunken woman and the shopkeeper mentioned. Who was he? Where was he? I did not know then. What I did know was that I had gone to Gorditik and destroyed the bastardized memorial made by the enemy, but I did not even know of who my enemy was. That was all I knew, is that it was some impervious, unfathomable usurper who disrupted and destroyed the lives of so many. Is it truly this order of hooded individuals that wrought such wretched hatred upon us? I could not center my thoughts as I went upstairs, returning to my room. I saw it as my room, my stalwart ground against an unseen enemy, both right outside the window and beneath me. Perhaps my enemy was just within the walls, and I just could not see it yet. I didn't know. Outside, the skies, though dark, did not show any sign of the storm like last night. While the moon had come up, the same green glow permeated through the clouds, and the streets were empty. A knock at the door came, and I about lost my breath as I sat up. Who could possibly be knocking? I clutched my staff, making my way to the lock which I had securely fastened before laying down for just a few moments. I cracked it to see a green eye looking back at me. It was the attendant from downstairs. "A bit of bread and soup for the young priest," he said. I opened the door, allowing him to bring it in and sit it on the table near the window. He paused, rubbing his hands. "I suggest you be wary of the calm as Hotsy smiles and quietness normally precede chaos," he said. "I noticed there was no storm tonight," I said, making my way to the table with just a bit of small talk to distract for my mind going over the strange phrase he had said. "Storms come with night. Do not worry. It helps to assure that Telis remembers its place." He paused. "By the sea, I mean. Lots of storms come off the ocean." I looked at him and noticed he was speaking to me, but his gaze had not left the window. "Sleep well, young priest." As he departed the room, I went over to the door and listened for his footsteps to fade and the creak of the stairs down the hall to tell me he was gone. I secured the door again with the latch and checked it. I wasn't hungry, and looking out at the empty streets, my eyes glanced towards the Temple of Telis. The clouds were rolling over the city, and though there were pale lamps casting an orange glow on the streets themselves, I felt unlike I did last night. Fatigued but not sleepy. In truth, I wasn't going to lay down. I had been thinking of my intent since before the innkeeper had come in, and now I was sure of my next step. I pushed open the window and looked down at the worn roofing just beneath me. It would be a careful bit of footwork, but I could make it. With staff in hand, I looked back over to the door and then threw one leg over the windowsill. "Just a bit of fun, like back at the temple at home," I said to myself, thinking back to playing with my fellow brothers and sisters of the priests and priestesses of Vasual. "Vaskuda, be with me." I slipped to the roofing and slide almost immediately to the next landing, making a bit of ruckus before leaping down to the ground level. I stayed squatted down, slowing my breathing and rising up. I was just below one of the windows of the inn, and looking inside, I saw the innkeeper had not heard me. He was reading a book, and looked rather unamused, in fact. Checking both ways down the road, I darted towards the darkness of the opposite side and began towards the temple. Telis at night had a much different feeling, that of the day. While the melancholy strangeness of the daylight hours was disturbing in its own solemn sadness, permeating in every person and structure, night was like a beast. Not ravenous and obviously terror-inducing, but a more subtle, a hunted feeling overtook me. It was as if eyes were upon me from every dark corner and shadow. The smells varied, and perhaps that was the oddest of happenings. Several times the scene had gone from salt-filled sea to that of mud, and then to the more putrid smells like before. The air would be warm and then cold on my face, and at random I felt the need to vomit. The temple offered no sense of feeling as a temple of Varuda should have. I had reached the closest part of the temple, a column beside the main doors. While there was none of the hooded order standing outside, I did not feel the presence of the one God. There was no light here, no resonance as I stepped from the muddy road onto the stone before the doorway. I made my way to the door, half expecting for it to be locked, but it was not. Taking a deep breath, I pulled open the door and found the inside cold and dark. With my back against the door, I took a moment for my eyes to adjust. The light from outside shone through windows in the upper part of the temple. The many pews that I expected were thrown asunder and broken. Shattered wood and stone littered either side of the center aisle that led to the altar. Where I expected a metal effigy with 8 points, I saw a broken metal rod and something tied to it. The metal effigy was an anchor point in all temples, 8 points with glowing gold at the tips. The mark of Varuda. But there was nothing of our one God here, and as I made my way down the aisle, I could see the skeletal form of the priest who had been here, tied to the metal rod. Before the rod, a new altar made of sea rock and blackstone. It was dripping, the only audible sound within the place. As I reached it, I caught the dripping fluid with the tip of my staff and held it up in the bleak light. Blood. It's blood. I looked up to the priest, seeing his skull barren of flesh. Looking on to the original altar of the temple behind the new one, I could see stacks of human flesh. My stomach turned, and I looked around the altar itself, feeling a cold freeze come over me. My feet fell sluggish. Then the door clicked open at the front of the temple. I bolted from where I was to a corner of the temple, as far from the altar as I could get. I looked around for a door or some way out, some other place to hide, but there was nowhere to go. In first came several hooded individuals. As they entered the temple, they each went different directions. 2 stayed near the door, but in either corner, 2 more went towards the altar itself, while yet another dragged a sackcloth bag through the door. A few moments passed before another came through the door. It was someone wearing a hood, but not like the others. His simpler garb was brown. But then there came a final figure, robed in black, and what appeared to be glowing green robes, just visible beneath his outer hood. The brown-robed individual went to the altar, where the sackcloth bag was. "Glory to Mortua," he said. "Your shedding is not enough. She must take the pledge, or she must not be. We are too close to have any unfaithful here." The figure behind, the one with the glowing green undercloak, said, "I have shed for her, and I both," he said, barring his arms that even from afar I could see were barren and near skeletal. It was the shopkeeper from before. The central figure now brandished a staff, its tip flashing green and reacting with its robes. "Not enough. It is time." At this point, the 2 hooded individuals joined the one holding the bag. Untwisting twine and twine binding, they pulled out none other than the shopkeeper's daughter. Her mouth was gagged. They pulled the gag and she went to try to fight. "No, wait," he begged. "Archmancer, please." They all began to hiss. His daughter with torn robes and a bleeding face reached out to him. "I will do it." "Father," she cried out, "please, I will go back to like I was before. I will read of their books. I will praise Mortua." "See, she will," the shopkeeper said. "She need not feel the bite of Mortua, the gnashing of teeth and claws. No, we cannot subdue her any longer without sacrifice. For you must be the lifeblood for our goddess who rules the void between life and death. It is necessary," the one I knew as the Archmancer said. This was the most I had heard them talk. Any of them. Any within Telis, in fact, except for the drunk woman. She must be shed, both arms and legs, and take on the mark of Mortua. The Archmancer went on. The Archmancer brandished a curved black knife. "Remove what is asked, now." The shopkeeper took the knife, barely able to control his own hand, shaking as he began to sob, going towards her. "I did all I could. I pledged to you all, to Mortua. I mustn't. You must." They all hissed in unison. "Father," she said. "Father." She screamed. I clutched my staff, wishing to help, but not knowing what I could do. I was no priest. I couldn't just not do anything. I had to act. But then, the shopkeeper did something that I did not expect. He stopped. "I shed and took on those that you wished," he said, turning to the Archmancer. "Do what is decreed," the Archmancer said. "I did it. I lost my mind to you, and she gave it back. You lied, all of you. Now, you wish me to take the skin of my daughter? Pain and suffering precedes awakening. A truth even those of your dead god will tell you," the Archmancer said. "How can one know what is good without first going through the trials of pain? Is not peace sweeter when you've tasted the bite of true suffering? Mortua, our goddess, wishes only the strong to inherit the world she offers. You must show such fortitude, for she is worthy of such devotion. The shopkeeper looked at his daughter. Your mother, she would have wanted this. She will understand. He stepped towards her. She wit. See the light of Varuda. Believe. Believe when the shadows fall and my body is cold. Dear child. The shopkeeper turned back, lunging for the archmancer. The archmancer glowed green, reaching out and stopping the shopkeeper only a few paces from where he had started. The shopkeeper shook, still trying to force himself forward. The black dagger in his hand disintegrated and appeared in the hands of the archmancer. Surely you are the strongest of Telis after all the others. After Kvatik resisted, the captains resisted. You wish yourself to be added to those beneath, to await the great awakening? No, please, the shopkeeper's daughter screamed. The archmancer made a movement with his hand, and the girl was grabbed from behind. Her muffled scream was constant. Then, the others not holding her drew out their staffs. Sacrifice is required, but you are no longer of fortitude, seen worthy for continued service, the archmancer said. Then they attacked the shopkeeper, over and over. Their strikes seemed to flash silver as they struck the shopkeeper's flesh. He remained suspended as they pummeled his arms and legs, pulverizing them as they moved up to his abdomen and chest. The cracks of his bones echoed off the halls of the temple. I slid down from my position, standing. I could barely breathe. The archmancer lifted his staff. Green fire consumed the shopkeeper, and it seemed the ground beneath the floating flesh and broken bones opened. Then the temple was dark again. Another added into the others. Now she must be made as she should be. I couldn't see what they did as they did it, but it was dark, and though I could see nothing, I heard the sounds of tearing and cutting. But it did not take long. In the end, the hooded individuals and the shopkeeper's daughter walked out together, and the temple became quiet again. I struggled to contain myself. I wanted to run, but I did not know where I would run to. Forcing myself up, I went to the altar and saw bleeding pieces of flesh laid out with the others. These were newer, glistening in the pale light above. I looked to where the shopkeeper had been suspended, and now there was a crack in the floor of the temple that was not there before. It is then I realized what I had seen before. The strange cracks throughout the city. The pungent dead smells. It was others that had resisted. But what did it mean? I was getting closer to the truth. Returning to the inn and to the purported safety of my room, I had one bit of ease, in that the innkeeper was gone from the front of the inn, so slipping in and up was easy enough. I secured the door and the window. Laying down, I stared into the clouds outside, realizing that there had not been a storm. But then, almost as if it was waiting for me to realize such, lightning flashed and the ground shook. I sat up as bands of rain pummeled the outside window. The stench of the dead filled my nose. What can I possibly do? Chapter 5. Sacred Oath. Having fallen asleep with a torrential downpour, I awoke sometime later to the brightest day I had seen in Telis. But the fog was substantial. I looked out towards the harbor and could barely see past the main road, and seeing other buildings was nearly impossible. I would seek out the woman from before. Perhaps she could tell me more. I needed alcohol, though. I'd have to go to the shop, but in truth, I needed to. I needed a check on the shopkeeper's daughter. I couldn't even say that I had slept the few hours before. I didn't dream. I didn't think, I guess. It was like I had closed my eyes and time had just moved away from me before I opened them a moment later. Making my way downstairs, I found the innkeeper was still gone. Odd, but not as odd as how very bright it was. I looked towards the west, and through the bleak fogs, the whitest of lights pushed through, forcing me to look away. I covered my head and made my way east down the road, noticing my long shadow from the light. I came to the shop and found the shopkeeper's daughter standing behind the counter. "Another bottle, please," I said, pointing to the liquor behind her. She stared at me with blank, near-black eyes. Her arms were covered, but I could see scarring on her wrists and hands. I paid with gold and smiled, but her expressionless face was the only communication she had with me. But it was enough. They had taken some of her skin, adding it to the altar in the temple. They had placed her father in some pulverized form, leaving only his head intact beneath the ground, just as they had done to others. She had healed quickly, though. Perhaps they used some form of dark power for that? Mortua. Who is Mortua? The brightness in the west had lessened some, but was still prevalent. The fog, however, was even thicker. Then came thunder that shook the ground. As a few paces from the inn when the bright light darkened and it became as night again. The wind howled. I could hear the ocean some distant away. And then waves of water surged up the street, coming directly at me. I retreated back, seeing others walking around Telis, but none seemed to react. The water returned towards the sea, and while the fog was whipped by the wind, the light did not return. It was dark, and not even the pale green light I had become accustomed to returned. I searched around the docks, taking note of the black reef out in the harbor, and then noticing some type of structure on the rocks surrounded in a thick layer of fog. Then I saw Belia. She saw me too, and motioned for me to follow her. "Wait, where are we going?" I shouted. She was leading me back towards her camp. "Young priest, you are in danger. The time is soon. It comes. Drink my drink." He offered her the alcohol and she began to chug it. "Time soon. They've kept giving me what was needed for my state, but they do not know. They know nothing of me. I have managed to make prayer. Days have passed since our first meeting here. Or is it weeks? Or is it months? I do not know. Have you looked at yourself?" What do you mean?" She pointed towards the water, and I turned, looking at my reflection, but seeing not myself. I touched my head, realizing my hair was longer. "How long? How many days?" I asked. "Too long," she said. "I do not recall. I have bought much liquor, and now all of it has gone to good supply, but most has indeed a hope for prayer." "What are you talking about?" I asked. She began rummaging through crates near her campsite, soon revealing at least 24 bottles of unopened liquor. "I was once holy, but I am no longer. I drank and they found me useless. Now I have use. I have saved these so as to reignite the light of our one God, if only for a moment." "Maybe it is enough, priest, maybe. I have prayed over these bottles, prayed to make them sacramental. It should be enough." I realized that Belia, whoever she really was, had made a point to put her camp beneath the statue for a reason. It was a safe place for her, but as we're all holy figures and peoples of our race, it was something blessed by Varuda. She sought to rekindle Varuda's light through any means necessary. I had tried with wood, but it was all too wet. The fogs and storms prevent fires, they saturate the wood. Those that make sacrifices to them, they do not need like we need. No. But those at the inn, the fire, it has to be kept. Had to be kept more so. It is over. The guise is no longer needed. The towers of light, meant to outshine that of Vasharhala's come. They will soon make the final move. She had torn up the cloak I had given her the other night, however long ago that was, and was tying the cloth to the bottles. "I shall bring fire to our glorious statue, and you, priest, will pray." We shall contact those that can stop this. She took coals from her small fire in her bare hand, putting it against the cloth until it caught fire. For the glory of Varuda. She threw the bottle, shattering it on the statue of the Anointed One. Then, bottle after bottle, she threw more and more. A great and bright fire grew, engulfing the statue too with the growing sounds of Belial's cheers. She swigged some of the drinks while throwing the others. As the fire grew higher and higher, it pierced the fogs, and beyond the fogs I saw that the sky was starry. It wasn't even daytime yet. I thought it was. Ve, call to Varuel. I closed my eyes, bowing. Varuda, I do not know what my purpose was, but I am here. I have seen the shadow over Telis. I have seen the horror. Let my prayers flow through the halls of Varuda. Know that evil comes. Something mortua. It comes. It is beyond the holiness of our great Creator, and I do have fear, and I shall push forward. Please, deliver us. She kept throwing the bottles. The fire had burned away the thick, mossy coverings of the statue, returning it nearly to its silver form before. It was scarred with fire and blackness, but it remained, ever stalwart. As the smell of the rotting odor rolled over us, the sight of the night sky beyond the fog vanished, and the bright green glow of Telis returned. Then, the brighter light to the west of us. I could tell, standing near the water, that the light was coming from the structure on the black reef. And if our prayer was heard, by Enni, let us have faith, she said. I turned to look at her when in an explosion of water and rock, she was ripped from her place beneath the statue and was gone beneath the water. I spun about with my staff, backing away from the water with my eyes as wide as they could be. In the name of... I couldn't say the name of my God. Then, the lightning and thunder returned, before the clouds above broke, sending me to seek shelter. Turning around, I ran for the inn. Again, I did not know where to go, but for now that seemed best. Reaching the relative safety of the inn once again, I stared out of the windows just inside and tried to understand what was happening. I can't stay here. I must go for the gates. I need to get help. I don't know. Are you trouble, young priest? A voice said behind me. I jumped, turning to see the innkeeper. No, I took a moment to look back. The voice was familiar. Surely one of Varuda's own shall not falter in their faith. I did know the voice. It was the same as before, back in the temple. But it was different than the innkeeper's voice before. I held my staff out. Who are you? Just one of many, many across your lands. The veil takes different forms in different regions, but for her, in Telis and Kavatik, on into even Elantria, the fogs flow from the oceans, and it has begun. The light behind you will grow brighter, he said, pointing, and when it is bright enough, that which you of Vasrahal hold so dear will darken and will not ever shine again. The innkeeper blinked several times and then simply stared at. Are you okay? Were you done? I asked, just to see what the innkeeper would say. I'm afraid I'm not sure what you mean. Another room? Stew? I turned away, looking out towards the now obvious outline of the tower, standing upon the black reef. It was beginning to glow again. I still could not see its full form, but it was bright. You must leave this place, I said to the innkeeper. You must not stay. Go east. I took my leave of the inn, heading back up the central road towards the eastern gate. I would not return this way. As I passed the shop I had went to before, I went to the shopkeeper's daughter. The time is coming. The light is near, she said. The time is coming. The light is near. Listen, I said. You need to leave. You can escape whatever it is, but you must go now. The time is coming. The light is near, she said back. I backed out of the shop, hearing others saying the same phrase as I hurried further away. Looking back, I saw many robed individuals forming a line at the far end near the harbor. The great light behind them was growing brighter with each passing moment. Fogs rolled over the roofs above me. Then, I saw a fiery horse thundering down the road towards me. The fire on its form glowed with a golden hue, yet the horse itself was nearly a skeletal being. Upon it was a rider in silver, brandishing a great sword and shield. I lifted up my staff and the rider dismounted. "You are the young priest, lost within Telis." I stuttered. "I am not lost. I have much to tell those of Vasrohais." The winds picked up around us. He grabbed me, pulling me up the road. "I have been lost in the mist for some time," I told them. "This region was cursed. I sought out the answer, and I have found it, but we are out of time. I have heard of you in the whispers of the enemy, but it has indeed been months since you arrived. That said, do not fear. You are the answer to my prayer. You showed me out of the fogs and back towards Varuda and the light. The fire, the statue. It showed me the way here. There was a shrill scream on the air. He looked down towards the harbor. "They are here?" "Yes, robbed ones. Order of..." "Do not speak its name." He drew his sword. "You must deliver a message to Vazaral, to the Grand Order. You must tell them that I was right." He removed his gauntlet, pushing it to him. It was golden and ornate, with a single blue sapphire in the center of it. "They will well know who held that gauntlet," he said. "Wait, is he of the Anointed Ones? A sapphire captain? Why would he ever be here?" "Tell them to seek the gods of the north and the Dwemer. That is the only way. They must appease to Varuda to open the paths and allow us to seek salvation beyond this cursed realm." "Gods of the north?" I asked. "There is but one god, Varuda, who is in..." "Shut up, boy." The man sighed, taking a deep breath. "I did not forsake the Anointed Ones to be schooled by some almost prius. Do what I have told you, get to Vasra Hall, sound the bells and save our race before it is too late." The fogs rolled thicker upon them. The air turned from crisp to heavy. I tried to take a deep breath and struggled. "Run, take my horse. She will get you outside of the fog." Before I had any word in the matter, the man lifted me up and I was on the back of his skeletal beast. It was an abomination of a creature. Aside from it being nothing but bones and golden fire that did not burn me, its eyes were stark white, and I could see through its body to a strange, beating heart deep within its chest. "Where do you go?" I asked. "I'm an anointed one of Azrael's regardless of my form now," he said, showing that part of his right arm was already skeletal. "I must secure your path." At that moment, a half-dozen of the hooded beings were upon them, and in a single motion, the Anointed One flashed out his shield, a burning fire leaping from it and into their foes. The hooded ones flailed back, screeching, their robes aflame. The horse took off with me upon its back with a fury I had never experienced from a living being. But this was no living being. I glanced back just before losing sight and saw the strange warrior in combat with the Archmancer from before. I knew those green robes even from afar. The memory tied to them was a living nightmare. I did not wish to flee. As a priest, we were to support and fight with anointed ones. But it wasn't like the skeletal horse was going to listen to me. It rode hard, and was not over the green fields as I remembered. The ground was brown and dead, the grass withered. I did not know what had happened, but the lands were sick. I did not know how fast we were going, but it was almost as if the horse was not touching the ground, but yet moving overtop it. Nonetheless, in a matter of minutes, I could see Elantria, and with it, I'd noticed the fogs had receded. Dawn was coming in the east, and I further had no idea how much time had passed, be it days, weeks, or months. As we reached the gates, the horse snarled and I slid off to the side. The guards at the gates stood up with their weapons out as the horse whinnied, then took off back west. I assumed at this point to return to the Anointed One. I turned to the guards. "We must go. A darkness is coming," I told them. "We must get to Vashruhal." They were looking towards me, but not at me. I turned to see a great pillar of light far in the distance, moving slowly and in unison with other great pillars farther north, and turning, I saw further south. "Get in here, boy," one of the guards said. "You must hide." I tried to speak again, but they forced me into the gates, and I shook my head. As I hurried back across Elantria, I saw that the city was even worse off than before. It looked mostly abandoned, and I saw bodies stacked in tall piles. The dead were everywhere. I passed Gravinla House, the inn from before. It was abandoned. As I made it to the opposite gates, and the gate to which I had begun my journey, I saw the same female guard from before. She looked pale and much skinnier than she had before. The light that had been upon her form was gone. "You," she said, "you came through so long ago. Months?" "I did," I said. She fell to her knees. So many have died. Many have fled, but we hold for Vasrusa. Vasrusa shall come."
I smiled, trying to comfort her. "You must speak to your lord, abandon this place, and flee towards the holy city. Do not stay. With the fog comes death." "Death is already here," she said, tears in her eyes. "Please just go to the city." Behind me, light shined brightly, and though the sun rose in the east, the pillar of light had broken across the land, bringing with it the fogs from the ocean. I found myself unable to see anything save the woman before me. "It's too late," she said, but her voice was not her own. "You should have kept running." I clutched my staff. "In the name of Vasurda, flee from her." I could hear the laughing before I saw the green glow of his robes. The terror from before, the archmancer, had come. Its form burned away the fogs, and in his hand was great black staff crowned with a jagged toothed skull. There are many ways to face that which is ahead, but I say that you should choose that what it is you desire most. I thought at first it was talking to me, but then I saw the spear of the guard fall, nearly hitting me, and heard her gasping for air. "An unwilling servant? Fine." It was then, in the light of the great pillar now sitting above Elantria, I could see hundreds of others beyond the archmancer. It was a great scourge of servants, now under the rule of this thing. "Archmancer," I shouted, "you must not pass." "Archmancer?" He laughed. "You call me as they did at the temple, when they didn't know. Many do not know who or what we are, or anything beyond the confines of your own knowledge. The word you search for is necromancer, servant of Mortua, to whom our glory spreads from. Beyond her is Vankau, god of death. Do you not know anything, priest?"
He stepped forward. The skin on his head was partially rotted. He reached out to me, and I held my staff out, backing up as I did. I felt the wood of the stable behind me and heard a horse neigh.
"You cannot escape this fate, young priest," he said. The ground shook, and the sizzle of the fogs caused both of us to look towards the sound. I saw the golden fire of the Anointed One strike directly before the necromancer, knocking it back. With sword and shield out, the man threw back the fogs, revealing the undead, just a few paces from me. His steed charged first, biting at the foes, as the two of them fought together. But the undead were innumerable. As they swarmed him, I outstretched my staff, light of Vostroda Engu. Light poured forth, formed my staff, surrounding the Anointed One. He slammed his shield and sword on the ground, sending out a rippling wave of golden fire. Then, in a move I did not expect, he reached up, summoning fire from far, far away, from the great torch atop Vassar Hall itself, burning away all the undead in a blast of blue fire that left the entire area before him burning with their corpses. He was no simple anointed one at all. He was one of the few, the blessed sapphire captains, the greatest of the anointed ones capable of calling upon the hand of Vastruda itself, from the torch of Vastruda atop Vassar Hall. Of such things I had only read before, but now I saw it for myself. The necromancer threw himself upon the warrior, sword and shield in hand. The warrior pushed back, feinting right and then leaping with a crushing slash that broke the necromancer's guard, shattering its staff. Then, in another burst of flame, he swung his sword, taking off the head of the necromancer. In a smite from his shield, he slammed the monstrosity into the ground. I used my staff again, bathing him in light, but he looked at me with a cursed glare. The dead were upon them again. Flee, boy. Get to Vassar Hall. Go! Now. I turned, going to the stables to get the last horse. It was a sickly animal, but I had no choice. Mounting it bareback, I did my best to hold on and direct it from the barn. The sapphire captain and his skeletal horse both looked at me. Neither intended to leave one another or that ground. But I didn't get it then. Why wouldn't he flee with me? The enemy is destroyed. I will never forget what I saw then. The necromancer stood back up, its body revitalized, and its head, even though it had been cut from its body, reemerged from its form. Flee, the sapphire captain shouted. And I did. I rode that horse without looking back again, across the barren fields and into yet untouched land, still green, still alive, but for how long it would last, I did not know. For hours we kept a pace only surpassed by the skeletal horse before. The sun was up and fogs rolled over distant mountains, but ahead I could see the light of the great torch and the holy city of Vashruha. Just before reaching the southern gates of the city, my horse slowed and then collapsed. I stood up, having kept hold of the sapphire captain's gauntlet the entire time. I looked towards the holy city, knowing my Vahami was complete, but in truth, I felt I had started even a greater journey. It has been weeks since I returned. I was offered a position as a priest of Varuda, my Vahami deemed fully worthy of the final task and blessed. But the world has changed. The cursed pillars of light moved to blot out the light of our holy city. Vassar Hall is threatened. Now I've taken up arms of sword and shield along with my staff. Being given the gauntlet of the sapphire captain, I was given the unique choice to be what so few were, and now I'm beyond just a young priest. I am something new for my caste in these horrid times. A Templar among priests, the first of my kind. But in the darkening days, I've taken an additional mantle. I've taken up the call and been ordained an anointed one of Vasrahal and a Templar. I am a true sacred defender of the last city of men. Regardless of the shadow of Telis and what has come it, I will fight for my people, for my city, and for the glory of Vasruda. Want a bit more? Pre-order The Anointed Ones and see the conclusion of events concerning the Templar, Anointed Ones, and the war against Mortua. Author's note, January 2023. How did I only recently read Lovecraft? I don't know. But I tried to capture some of that mysterious creepiness here. I hope you caught some of that. And if you haven't read Lovecraft, most of it can be found free on Amazon. I enjoyed H.P. Lovecraft's The Shadow over Innsmouth. While my story was similar, it took a very different turn, leading to bigger events than that other story. The Anointed Ones will have a much more war-heavy feel, but will complete the story from the events so far. All in all, I hope you enjoyed this short tale. J.G. Williams.